Thank you, everyone who is coming on in. I'm just giving some time for people to be logged in to the Zoom webinar tonight. Thank you so much, State Senator Brisport from Albany. On your screen, you can see, we'd love to learn more about you. In the chat, please just share your name, neighborhood, and why you're here tonight. And I'm just gonna give another couple minutes for a few more people to trickle in. For those who have just joined, again, State Senator Brisport. I'm in Albany right now, giving a couple minutes for people to keep on trickling in. In the meantime, you can see on the screen, just share a little bit about yourself in the chat, your name, your neighborhood, and why you are here. Thank you. Just giving it like another 60 seconds. Again, for those just logging in, State Senator Brisport here in Albany. We're at our budget town hall, giving a little bit more time for people to hop on in, but you can see on the screen, please share a little bit about yourself in the chat, your name, your neighborhood, and why you are here tonight. And let's start at 7:05. Starting shortly, feel free to keep on putting in the chat your name, your neighborhood, and what brings you here tonight. Thank you again all for coming. Very excited you could join us and join me and my team here on a Tuesday night. Okay, it's 7:05. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, State Senator Brisport representing the beautiful 25th State Senate District in Brooklyn. That's Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, little bits of Prospect Heights and Crown Heights. I am not in any of those lovely neighborhoods right now. I am up in Albany, in my Albany office, as we continue our budget negotiations. Thank you all for taking some time to be here tonight. We'll send out the slides after the call, but wanted to give you an update on the state of play because the state budget is due April 1st, and we are down to the last fights we're in. So thank you again for joining. Let's go to the next slide, please. Tonight, our agenda is to explain the state budget process, to share what's at stake in this year's budget, and not only explain and share, but to empower you, your budget justice advocacy. Next slide, please. The New York State budget is really, you can think of it in two large buckets. It's all the services, support, infrastructure, funding provided by the state. We have some lovely icons down there for healthcare, for transit, for schools, hospitals. And of course, it's not just what we pay for, but also how we bring in the money to pay for the services, support, and infrastructure. Revenue, you will hear multiple times in this budget process. Next slide, please. The state budget, the state's budget year, does not match the calendar year. It's not January through December. It is April 1st up until March 31st. And so that's why I'm saying it's due April 1st. It's due for to be ready for the start of the new state budget in the next 2 weeks. And you may hear the budget referred to in different ways. One way might be FY, fiscal year 26 to 27, as in starting in April of 2026 and ending March 31st of 2027. Or you may hear of it as FY, fiscal year 27, because that's the year that it ends on. Next slide, please. And before I keep on going, I do want to hear from all of you what you want funded in the budget. And we have a few topics on the screen. We're going to put up a poll, but you have education, healthcare, housing, childcare, transportation, maybe something else. Poll is up. Take your time, not too much time, but let us know what you want to get funded in the budget, and we will share the results shortly. I see the comments in the chat too. Love it in the chat. Gonna give it like another 15 seconds. Very interested in what people want funded. And of course, all of the above. I believe you're able to vote for multiple things. Okay, that's time. Are we able to show the results of the poll? Yay! I see childcare is far and above the biggest winner, although you're all winners because it's your budget. So we have a lot of support for education, for healthcare, housing, transportation. This is all very, very important. Let's go on to the next slide. This is a pie chart of how the spending is expected to be broken down in this upcoming budget. Um, if you want a dollar amount, the governor proposed a budget in the realm of $260 billion. It may be a little bit more than that. Hopefully it is, because there are some other things we want to get in there by April 1st. But that's the sort of dollar figure. And if you look at the pie chart, you can see a lot of the big ticket items. You can see we spend most of the budget on health and education, 27% on health, another 27% on education and the arts, another 9% on higher education, and then a few other topics: mental hygiene, transportation, social welfare, and so on. And since I know a lot of people were asking about childcare, I will say that's, even though many of us in the childcare space know that childcare is education, the way it's categorized in spending is within the sort of social welfare, social services category, even though we know it is early childhood education. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the timeline so that people know what timelines we're dealing with, especially because I know somebody in the chat mentioned the city budget, which is totally after this. That's due like end of June, but it is affected by what we do in the state. So I'll go through what the timeline is in the state. Let's go to the next slide, please. January is always the executive budget. It begins with the executive proposing her vision for what should be the shape of New York State's budget. She usually starts with something called the State of the State, which is a big, flashy press announcement of her general vision for the state's budget. Then she actually releases the nuts and bolts in a like multi-hundred-page document about a week later or so. And that's called the executive budget. And it's not the final budget, it's just her proposal of what it should look like. Next slide. The next month, starting February, we start picking apart her proposal. We do these things called budget hearings. On your screen, you can see a picture of me asking the commissioner of OCFS questions. OCFS is the Office for Children and Family Services. That is the department which correlates to my chairmanship as the chair of children and families, but also the state agency that runs the bulk of childcare funding, although some of it is run through the Department of Education. If you want to learn more about what happened in this year's budget hearings, you can see the QR code on your screen. It goes to the Senate website, which has links to the archived videos and recorded videos of all the budget hearings. And just so you know, these are hearings that the public can testify in as well. They're over for this year, but for next year, you are allowed to testify at these. You can sign up to testify at them and share your thoughts on the budget as well. But in terms of this year, if you want to just watch some of these hearings, they are all listed and all been public recorded and archived for your viewing to know what we were discussing as we were picking apart the governor's proposal for the budget. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the reason we pick apart the governor's proposal for the budget, we meaning the legislature, is so that we can propose our own counter proposals. The counter proposals are known as the one house budget. You get one from each house of the legislature. So the Senate does its one house budget, its vision of how the budget should look, and the Assembly does its one house budget proposal. And those we were introduced last week, Monday, and we passed them all last week, Thursday. Next slide, please. And here's where it gets fun. And you see the sign, you are here. We are now in late March, and we have entered the phase known as three-way negotiations. This is the last 2 weeks of budget negotiations. And this is a time where, unfortunately, as your senator, I have a little less agency than I would like. The negotiations are almost entirely conducted between what is known as the three people in the room. That is the governor and her team. You can see Governor Hochul there at the top. You also have the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and her team. She sort of negotiates on behalf of the whole Senate. So the senators were not all in the room, but the Majority Leader, she is negotiating on our behalf. And then on the bottom right, you have Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, who negotiates on behalf of the entire state assembly. So that's kind of where we are now, is it's getting negotiated between these three bodies, the governor, the leader, and the leadership of each house in the Senate and the assembly. Next slide, please. The final budget, which is due April 1st, is never one bill. It's broken out into 10 separate bills by topic. That first one, revenue, you may have heard the phrase tax the rich. That is something that would happen inside the revenue section of the budget. You have a variety of things. Debt service, that's when we pay off debt. The state takes on debt to do capital projects, construction for the MTA, construction of new hospitals, construction of new schools, things like that. That's always done by taking on debt and then paying it off later. And so that is just a piece of the budget every year, is paying off the debt of capital projects that we have taken on as the state. There are lots of others. I know childcare is important to a lot of people on the call. So you can see the bullet point for that is education, labor, and family assistance. That's the section of the budget, and that's the budget bill that will contain childcare. Although other things, funding for childcare may come from the revenue section. So sometimes topics may be split between various bills. And I say all this because this is the way it's supposed to work. And items should be broken up specifically by topic. However, next slide, please. Every year, there is something that we colloquially call in Albany as the big ugly. And that is often when, as part of a negotiating tactic, the governor may force something that she really wants, that the legislature doesn't really like, in with stuff that the legislature really wants to do as a sort of trade. And it's often called the big ugly, and it's, legislators saying, okay, this has some of the good, some of the bad, it's kind of ugly, it's a lot in there. And that can be anything. For example, a few years ago, there was a lot of debate over changes to the criminal justice code and bail reform, making changes to it very unpopular with the legislature, but very popular with the governor. And instead of putting it in the section of the budget that deals with public protection, the changes to the criminal justice code were put in the section of the budget that deals with childcare and education. housing, things that all the legislature really wanted, and that was the creation of the big ugly. So that's another layer that happens sometimes in budget negotiations. Next slide, please. Okay, I just did a big information dump, so I'm going to give everyone just a chance to process for about 5 minutes. I will be back in the at the end of that, and I will talk to you then. Thank you so much. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. Thank you all. Hope you had a good break. We are back for more of the budget presentation. Thank you all for sticking through. We can go to the next slide, please. And see in the chat, tax the rich. Yes. Yes, welcome back. Yes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I want to talk about some of the hot topics. Again, the budget is going to be over $260 billion. It is going to be thousands of pages long. I do not think I can cover everything in this little town hall we are doing tonight, but I want to share some things that are taking up a lot of the mental space and a lot of the conversations in Albany. Some of the more controversial topics. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, first up is childcare. And oh no, the E in childcare fell over. Who was responsible for this? I'm kidding. We did that on purpose. I carry the bill to do the Universal Child Care Act in the state Senate. We want universal child care. I see a lot of child care organizers and advocates on the call. Thank you so much. I love you. Appreciate you. Let's go on to the next slide. This is a reminder of some things that happened this year. You may have been aware, you may have seen January, just a few months ago, the governor made a major announcement alongside Mayor Zohran Mamdani about universal childcare. And part of their announcement was the launch of 2K or a 2K pilot in New York City. This is the headline on your screen. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown of everything from the governor's announcement, an additional $1.2 billion for vouchers. That is the predominant way that childcare, the system is funded in New York State, is through something known as the CCAP. It is the Child Care Assistance Program. It's a mixture of federal and state funds that takes the form of vouchers in New York City. It was underfunded in previous years, so you may have heard of a wait list where parents who were legally eligible for child care assistance from the state were told there wasn't enough money to cover their child and that they would just go onto a wait list. And in New York City, I believe the number reached 16,000. 16,000 families who were legally eligible for childcare assistance that weren't getting any. That was the size of the wait list. So the goal of the governor's $1.2 billion announcement is to close the wait list and to provide additional funding into that voucher program. Separate from that, the governor has proposed to do additional $470 million to pay for universal pre-K, which is just 4-year-olds by 2028. And that's an important distinction because our childcare system is it comes through a lot of modalities, different ages, different systems, different departments, agencies. But the vouchers I mentioned earlier cover children 0 to 12 or 0 to 13 versus UPK is 4 years old. And for those in New York City, you may be wondering what's going on with UPK outside of New York City, because UPK we've all had for a while in New York City, and then 3K, and now we're looking at 2K. Outside of New York City, it's still playing a little of catch up. And so outside of New York City, they're looking to reach UPK, which we've had for a while in New York City, by 2028. And then you see some additional funding for the 2K pilots in New York City specifically. This coming fall, expect to see enough funding for 2,000 children to be in 2K, and additional money for next fall, the next school year in 2027, 10,000 more, 12,000 in total. And the governor also proposed additional funding for 3K in New York City and pilot programs for outside of New York City that were 0 to 3 to sort of balance out the UPK, cover 0 to 3 through these universal pilot programs, which will be free for the parents in those specific districts. There are a few things that we're missing, and you might know what they are if you're paying attention in the chats. One of the big things being support for the workforce and funding the workers, which is pretty critical and crucial to expanding childcare. It is both a racial and gender justice issue. The vast majority of the workforce are women, particularly Black and Brown women, who make extremely low wages, often in the $30,000 range. But it is not only a racial and gender justice issue, it is a matter of pure logistics and scaling. We cannot take care of all of New York's children with the amount of workforce that we have. We would need to hire tens of thousands of more additional workers, and to do that, we need to pay them what they are worth. Next slide, please. This is a quote from the governor about her childcare proposal. She said, "I'm proud to deliver on this very ambitious plan with existing state revenues. We got it done. We found a path forward." I'm going to editorialize now and share what's troubling to me about that, which is that passing universal childcare requires new revenue. It requires taxing the rich. When the governor made her announcement, she gave a dollar figure of saying that her proposal would be in the realm of $4 to $5 billion. Universal childcare may easily cost more than 10, and it's worth every penny. But I do want to clarify that if she continues to refuse to find new revenue to pay for childcare, we cannot expand to universal childcare. Next slide, please. Okay. And I'm going to go into more of childcare in the one houses from the Assembly and the Senate. Both of them support what the governor has said about childcare and then add on top of it. So I'm going to show you on the next slide what we are adding on top of it. So everything you saw on the previous slide, the Senate and Assembly have said yes to, and we want to do a few other things. So next slide, please. Okay, so again, this is all yes to the additional money for the vouchers, for the 2K pilot, the 0 to 3. In the Assembly, some of the ideas they were throwing out were additional money for OCFS, additional money for 3K in New York City, legislative changes. So if a county had some unused childcare money, they could roll it over to the next year. Wage requirements that were holding some parents back. In the Senate right now is the only entity of the three that is pushing for the childcare workers. The Senate has proposed in our one house $500 million to raise childcare workers' wages. This is a top priority of mine in order to ensure that the workers in childcare are paid more. Our Senate Majority Leader needs a lot of backup because it's Senate, Assembly, and Governor, and we have one out of the three going in. But we fight hard, and let's get into the final one. We also see the Senate pushing for additional money for the outside of New York City, the childcare pilot programs, additional money for facilitated enrollment, and then some additional money for pre-K transportation aid. That means a lot, especially in rural districts, just making sure that there is the right transportation to help parents get their kid where they need to go. Next slide, please. And the question I have is this universal? You know, I'm very happy with the steps we are taking forward. I definitely want more money. It is more money, but I can see even in the chat, like what we have reached, people are saying no, right? It needs to be free. It needs to be all parents, and the workers must be paid like the educators they are. Again, I carry the Universal Child Care Act, which would do all of that. This budget will represent a step forward, but it is not necessarily universal. Next slide, please. Oh, I jumped ahead of my own slides. Okay, again, universal. This will make it universal childcare. About 8 to 13 billion. We've looked at lots of estimates from experts. Depending on which levers you look at, the numbers change, but something in the range of 8 to 13 billion dollars. I'm going to reiterate, it has to be free at the point of access. We already do this in public schools, K through 12 education. Childcare is education. It's just early childhood education. So free at the point of access. It is for children 6 weeks to 12 years old. It's full day. One issue parents have cited with UPK and 3K is that when they're tied to the school day, that their childcare ends at like 2 or 3 o'clock, and then they're looking for what needs to be done while they're still at work. So childcare needs to be full day. And at minimum, it needs to start with $1.2 billion to pay the childcare workers a living wage. That's a transition step when we will probably need to invest more to pay them like educators, but in the immediate have pushed for $1.2 billion to raise their wages, to give them slightly more livable wages. Next slide, please. Okay, that was all childcare. I want to talk about taxing the rich. This is really important. We have an incredibly wealthy state. We have a state where the wealthiest New Yorkers continually get richer and richer and richer. The gap between rich and poor continues to expand. And by simply taxing more by those who can afford to pay more easily without feeling any pain, we can do a lot of things like paying for universal childcare and so many other things. So again, this is not, it's not taxes as a punishment. It's a chance for New York's wealthiest to make our state even greater, to have things like universal childcare. Next slide, please. Again, New York is the most unequal state in the country. The Fiscal Policy Institute is a great partner of ours. They do incredible research into fiscal policy in New York and the impacts of the federal government on New York, HR 1. They are fantastic. Next slide, please. Fun fact from the New York City has more millionaires than any other city in the world. And also, you may have heard of the one big something bill that was passed at the federal level last year. I don't want to call it the full term. It's the one big whatever bill. That wasn't, you might have heard of the cuts that was threatening to schools and to SNAP benefits, but it wasn't just cuts to social services. It was a giveaway to the rich in the form of tax breaks. And what the Fiscal Policy Institute found is that if you look at high income earners, people that make $1 million or more every year, like not even that they have $1 million, they get $1 million every year and more, they collectively are saving $12 billion into their pockets than they were last year. So they're getting to keep $12 billion extra dollars instead of that being used for things like childcare, for our hospitals, for the MTA, all the things. Next slide. So here are some proposals that we pushed in the Tax the Rich campaign this year. There was, again, looking at those wealthiest New Yorkers into their pocketbooks, just looking at the personal income tax of those wealthy New Yorkers, we could raise about $10 billion from that. But because, some politicians have deemed corporations as people, even though they're not, we could also do a corporate tax and tax corporations, which are their own entities. It's not an income tax, it's a corporate tax. And that could raise upwards of $11 billion. We could also look at changes to the estate tax, really large mansions and large inheritances that the wealth give away almost tax-free to their youth, which really increases the generational wealth divide. And look at changes to that part of the tax code, and that could generate another $8 billion. Next slide, please. Another proposal we looked at was New York City only, that we would not even have the state raise state taxes on these high income earners, but just give Mayor Mamdani and the city council in New York City the power to raise income taxes at the city level on those same high income earners. And that would raise $4 billion just for New York City. Next slide. Unfortunately, in the executive proposal she released in January, she chose to go with zero from the rich. Below are two exact quotes from her. The first one was from a rally for Mayor Zohran Mamdani in October, I believe, where the crowd of thousands of people chanted "Tax the Rich," and she said, "I hear you." The other was from the Somos Convention in Puerto Rico in November, where again she was doing a speech and the crowd started chanting "Tax the Rich," and she said the phrase, "The more you push me, the more I'm not going to do what you want." Presented without comments, almost. I see you're commenting in the chat, but I just wanted to let you know the words that she said publicly. Next slide, please. Despite the governor proposing $0 in taxing the rich in her executive proposal, the Assembly proposed $3 billion in its one house, the Senate about 5.67. Again, y'all know where I am. I wanted tens of billions. I think they have so much more, and we could do so many more things. But this is where we landed last week with the Assembly an extra $3 billion and the Senate an extra 5.67 billion. Next slide, please. And this is something I wanted to touch on that's near and dear to my heart. We are, leaving taxing the rich aside. This is about immigrants. For those who don't know, I am the son of an immigrant. My father lived here undocumented 20 years. He was an immigrant from Guyana. And like many of you, I am horrified by the expansion of ICE. They remind me of the Gestapo that were used under the Nazi regime of Germany, and seeing what they are doing to immigrants, but also to citizens. Cold-blooded murders in broad daylight are truly awful. And one bill that a lot of immigration justice advocates have been pushing is called the New York for All Act, which would essentially, it's on the next slide. It would prevent collaboration between local police and ICE. So this straddles a fine line, which is that, because a lot of immigration is handled at the federal level, we cannot stop federal ICE agents from coming in to New York City. But even if they come in, we can pass laws to say we don't have to help them do anything. We don't need to share any data with them. We do not have to help, them find anyone. We do not need to collaborate or corroborate them in any way with what they're trying to do. And it should slow them down and do a job to protect New Yorkers more to the best of our ability. And in the Senate, this is like the sort of the marquee item of the immigration fight. In the Senate, we are trying to pass a package of bills to not just like do New York for all and stop collaboration of the NYPD with ICE, but also to do more protection of our schools, protection of our hospitals, our courts, from ICE collaboration. And, I always want to hear more from constituents, what you're seeing and what you're hearing on the ground. I know in Clinton Hill, there was a really unfortunate incident with ICE with a raid just a few weeks ago. And, I was sorry to be up in Albany that night, but I just do want to say for the constituents that put themselves on the line in defense of their immigrant neighbors, I see you and I value, and I just have so much respect for what you did. Next slide, please. This is another hot button issue known as the buffer zone proposal. I have gotten a lot of outreach from constituents opposed to this, but you may have seen in the news that there were protests outside of synagogues that were having events where they were selling land in occupied territory in Gaza or the West Bank. And so there are protests outside. The governor proposed a buffer zone of 25 feet outside of religious institutions. This has raised a lot of concerns about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom to protest political events, and has become a hot button issue in the state legislature and within the budget. Next slide, please. This is how the legislature has responded. The Assembly took the buffer zone proposal completely out. It is not in their proposal for the budget. The Senate introduced a weaker version. It is no longer a buffer zone. It is a new law that would create a misdemeanor if you physically and intentionally block somebody from entering a house of worship. Obviously, it would be better to just not include this at all. But these are the two alternatives being proposed by the Assembly and the Senate to the governor's proposal. Next slide, please. So here's where you fit in. If you want to join the fight, again, I said it was three-way negotiations. I saw somebody saying in the chat, like, who has her ear? We all do. We all have the ear of, not we in the legislature, New York, we all have the ear of the governor, of the leader of the state senate, and the speaker of the assembly as we enter these last 2 weeks of budget negotiations. And if you want to plug in through my office's actions, you can go to the link that's on your screen, bit.ly/SD25 volunteer. Next slide. You can also plug in like groups with Our Time, which helped organize a massive rally of nearly 2,000 people in Albany a few weeks ago, shouting to tax the rich for childcare and many things like that. You feel free to take up your phone and screen grab that QR code. And again, we'll send out the slides after this call. Next slide. Okay, and then here's a slide about things from my office. I know a lot of people's in the district's ears perk up at this section. It's my discretionary funding for CBOs, community-based organizations in the district. It's my own personal pot of money I will get after the budget is done to help fund groups in the district. I do not have billions of dollars. I know it's a $260 billion budget. I won't have $260 billion. I will have a much smaller pot of money, but I like to help out groups in the district. And please, I'm still accepting applications up until April 1st. So you can go to bit.ly/SD25 funds. Anyone can submit. I know there's people from outside my district here. I love you. I tend to spend my money on groups in the district, but I love you and appreciate the work that you do. Next slide, please. Okay, I did want to take some time for question and answer. You can use there's a Q&A function, I believe. Yeah, there's a Q&A function you can use to share your thoughts, whether it's a question or a comment. And I just have some community agreements on the screen. Make space, take space. If you are a person that tends to talk a lot, make some space for somebody new. If you're a person that's very shy, take some space tonight. Ask your question, make your comments. 2 is assume and act in good faith. That means if you see something and you're like, oh, I wouldn't have phrased it the way she would have phrased it. That's, don't assume that person meant it in a bad way. People communicate in different ways. So just assume good faith that people are just communicating in the way that's good, that works for them to the best of their ability. And I just ask that your questions are on topic, on the state budget. That's it. So let me see if I can access the Q&A. Okay, so yeah, I can see the Q&A, but now, and we also have the chat, but if you can put them in the Q&A feature. And if you're having trouble finding the Q&A feature, it should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It should be a little box with a question mark in it that says Q&A, and you can pose a question there. Okay, I have one question that has come in. I think I'm answering it live. It says, in the fiscal 27-year budget breakdown, there was a 3% allocated for elected official. What is that for in particular? I wouldn't be able to answer the full amount. I know that within the legislature, at least, those elected officials, there is budget not just for our salaries, but the salaries of all of our staff. And so, for example, I have a budget of around $700,000 for staff, and those are all the people that made this incredible slide deck for you tonight, but also answer the phones when you call the office that help me manage legislation and communications. And every legislator, whether you're in the Senate or the Assembly, has their own salary, but also entire budget for staff. And then also leadership has massive budgets for staff. So I think the leader of the state senate. She has a staff that numbers in the dozens. I would not even be able to tell you the full number, and I wouldn't know the number that the dollar amount that counts for. And then, of course, the governor is an elected official, so is the attorney general, so is the comptroller. I am not sure what the breakdown is for that, but I hope that clarifies what is meant by the elected official section. We have a question from Shana Rodriguez saying, why are we investing into SUNY universities to help create childcare when we can partner with current childcare providers to help support the university workforce? I think that's a fantastic idea. And part of this expansion of childcare is making sure that we take care of existing capacity. I know some of the SUNY universities have childcare centers located within the building, and so take advantage of that. But I think it's a great thing to bring up that sometimes when we're looking at the expansion, government may try to find new spaces when there's existing spaces and existing slots. And it's really important that childcare providers like you, John, I keep voicing this concern and voicing the fact that, we should not reinvent the wheel. If there's open slots with our providers, we should take advantage of those. Okay, and I have some other questions. We have from Jacqueline Bennett. Mike, they say, my concern is how will what's happening in Iran affect what is happening in New York City? Sorry, a lot of screens open. And I would just say that this is an illegal and unauthorized war in Iran. It will have a negative local impact. Gas prices have risen very quickly, and economists say that when those gas prices rise, that acts like a regressive tax as lower income households devote a higher share of their budget to energy. The war has also effectively halted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, a major shipping route, and of course, thousands of people have been killed, including school children. This war was literally started with Donald Trump bombing an elementary school with Tomahawk missiles. I know we have a lot of childcare advocates in the room today, and this is literally a matter of saving children's lives. We need to end this war immediately. We have another question about taxing the rich from Steve Peraza from Buffalo. Do we have wealthy allies who openly and proudly submit to the tax the rich reform? Not as many as we would like, but there are some. For example, Mark Ruffalo is a New York millionaire who supports taxing the rich, but millionaires like Governor Hochul are not leading the charge. And that doesn't matter because the overwhelmingly majority of New Yorkers in poll after poll are making the demand. Millions of New Yorkers are saying we should tax the rich to expand social services and infrastructure for the many. I see some other questions. We have, are there other ways that, I'm going to answer this live. Are there other ways that the one big ugly bill is impacting New York State budget strategy? Is there some planning ahead for big cuts in future years? If tax the rich doesn't work, what's most vulnerable to cuts? The top line thing would be healthcare for that. That one big ugly bill that was passed at the federal level had major cuts to Medicaid, and Medicaid is something that is heavily funded by the federal government. So when they do a big slash like that, it hits our federal funding. For those of us in the district, the Brooklyn Hospital Center is strongly at risk from those cuts. And if we do fail to tax the rich, we, in a best case scenario, see in the healthcare space reductions of services. In a worst case scenario, hospital closures. So that's also what's on the line when we're saying we must tax the rich to fund our state. And then I see another question says, is the reimbursement for CBO still be considered an increase? Still being considered for, I think, I'm not sure if I understand. We are considering a sort of COLA a cost of living adjustment or for workers in the social service sector. It's been rebranded as a TII, a targeted inflationary increase. Um, and that ideally should be in the budget. Just looking to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Um, I think I got everything. Um, I'm just double checking across the variety. I see another one came in from Leo Descartes. Anything in the budget to support low housing HDFCs, which are forced to increase housing rent, etc., due it all to the inflation tariffs, etc. That is an area I am not sure about, and that may be one I would need to get back to you on. These are public documents too, what the governor proposed and what the Senate and the Assembly proposed. Like many things in government, it's public but hard to find, which kind of defeats the purpose of making it public, but we should do a better job. So what we can do when we send out the slide, I can also send out links to the governor's proposal, the Assembly and Senate one houses. And what I tell a lot of people, like y'all, like you, everyday people, is just you can do Control F and in the documents in the PDFs. So you could search for HDFCs, but I will also look for it too. And apologies, I will be lying if I said I memorized every single thing in the budget proposals. Like it's $260 billion, thousands of pages, but definitely want to be as helpful as I can, and also want to empower you to be able to find what you want to find. That I see in the Zoom chat, we have why was the oversight of CDPAP ignored? I wouldn't be able to say why it was ignored. I do believe State Senator Gustavo Rivera was actively fighting to get it into the Senate's proposal. I was not in the room where leadership decided not to put it in there. That's also part of the process, which I didn't dive into too much tonight. You know, when that long stretch month where we're like analyzing the governor's budget and like doing these big public hearings, asking questions to the commissioners and also to the public. We're also internally having our own discussions and debates and whatnot. And, you know, we end up proposing a lot of things, and a lot of, you know, some things don't actually make it into even though the Senate's one house. So, yeah, I wouldn't be able to give you the inside scoop on why the oversight of CDPAP was ignored, just to answer the question, although I believe it should be in there. And I believe there's a bill to do it from Senator Gustavo Rivera. And I'm fairly certain that the oversight doesn't require funding. So even if it's not in the budget past April 1st, it's something we can get done by the end of the legislature session in June. Okay, okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm gonna give it a little bit more time, but I also know it's a Tuesday night. And you are on a webinar about the state budget on a Tuesday night. So I will not keep you longer than you need to be here. I'm not seeing any other questions in any of the spots we're taking them. So let's just move on to the next slide. Here's how to reach me. We got a phone, we got an email, we got an address. So you can reach out to me by any of those modalities. And please join our email list so we can reach out to you with all of our incredible updates. That's bit.ly/SD25-updates. I really want to thank you all for coming here. You know, a lot of people want to spend their night watching TikToks or you know, whatever, and you took the time to listen about the state budget, which is super important, a massive budget, $260 billion. And I want you to get involved. So I hope everyone here doesn't just like treat tonight as like a one-way direction of information going to you. I want you to be activated. I want you to feel empowered. This is your budget too. And please get on our list for updates. Thank you again for coming. Enjoy the rest of your night. Have an amazing dinner if you weren't already eating it during the presentation. And I hope to see some of you in the fight over the next 2 weeks for the best budget we can get in 2026. Have an amazing night. Thank you all so much. Bye.